I believe this training is really helpful in the sense that people with disabilities go through a lot of stigmatization and we have negative perceptions towards them, especially out here. So as a student ambassador in our institutions, I believe this training is important in that I will be used as an ambassador in terms of sensitizing the public on the importance of inclusion and providing equitable access to resources for students with disabilities. My key takeaway from this training is the fact that there's a difference between impairment and disability, and you can have an impairment without having a disability, in the sense that for disability you need to face barriers for it to become a disability, and many people can actually have impairments without even knowing that they have impairments. And so it's good practice that you sensitize the public on the importance of coming out and embracing our impairments and removing the barriers as we move towards curbing the disabilities in our institutions and communities at large.
Well, disability inclusion is important because students with disabilities have the right to access and succeed in our university. We are aware that a big number of students with disabilities do drop out of our education system in Rwanda simply because they are not appropriately accommodated at the basic education level and even much more at the higher education level. What is important is the accommodation strategies that are in place and the strategies, the policy framework that is already in place in Rwanda and in the international, on the international level.
Combining three universities come together and understand the issue of disability inclusion is very important. Unlike before, where we didn't have any information about disability inclusion. And because of this training on disability inclusion, I've realized there are so many take-homes to help them to implement such activities in their respective universities so that they are able to include persons or learners with disabilities in those universities, those students with disabilities to be able to access information and also be provided with reasonable accommodation depending on their impairment or disability. Because in the past, people used to think that disability, and they could use different terminologies, it's about handicap only. Yet we have a number of types of disabilities for which these service providers need to understand their needs. Now, we are in the era of leave no one behind, of the Sustainable Development Goal, and also the implementation of CRPD. And even the community has started asking themselves, why are people with disabilities being left out in the communities just because of the barriers they face? So this training is very helpful to open up the eyes to the academic institutions to understand why inclusion of learners with disabilities is very important and to understand how to solve those barriers they face. So it's very important because every person needs a very good education. It's good for their life and for their well-being. Without education, you cannot be. So it's very key to all. It can help to achieve two important things. The SDG goal number 4, also the CRPD Article 24, which talks about inclusive education.
This training was really important because we've realized what is needed in the universities. We realize that there is a content missing in universities which lead them to plan but not considering those needs for learners with disabilities. And for those who have, like University of Rwanda, who have students with disabilities, there is still a need of contextualizing or understand deeply what the learners with disabilities need and consider the different types of disabilities. And we realize that there is a need of those universities to adjust, to modify some infrastructure, methodologies, and other resources in schools so that they can accommodate those learners with disabilities.